in some ways, blindness prepared me for the loss of an arm and leg, because I remember making the choice not to know what had happened to me, because I knew something serious had happened to me. I woke up on the train tracks hearing the radios around me, the ambulance radios, and I made a decision not to ask what had happened. I just said, am I going to live?
I read all the side effects and I don't want to take that.
I take so many tablets I rattle.
I looked up Dr. Google and now I don't know what to believe.
Who comes up with the names for these medicines?
I hate taking medicines.
Hello, g'day everyone, and welcome to the Medicines Ed podcast. This podcast is for anyone who wants to know more about their medicines. It's for anyone who wants to feel more confident using them, because if you are more confident and clued up about your medicines, then you can make better choices about your health. You can make the choices that are right for you. I'm John, and I'm a pharmacist who loves to help people mind their own medicines.
Mind your 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 own medicines.
We all have a story to tell, and sometimes the same types of things will happen in our own lives. We'll learn from others how they take care of their health and the part medicines play in their lives. We'll learn more about the choices you can make. Now it's time for our disclaimer. This podcast is general health and medicines information only, and the content is not health advice. We're all unique, we're all special. So please consult your healthcare professional if you have any questions about your health. Now, let's jump into today's episode. G'day everyone. Today we're going to be chatting about using medicines if you're blind or have got trouble with your vision. And in one sense, that's all I could say the episode's about. But I actually think this episode is more than that. It's about doing life if you've had challenges and how to get through it, and how important maybe your mindset is to that. It's about choosing the sort of life you want to lead and then doing what you can to do it. It's a slightly longer episode. We've got a couple of chats. We've got one with David and Dianne. We'll talk to them first. David had issues with his vision later in life, and we'll get a sense from him and Dianne about how they manage things. And David, you will find, is fairly reliant upon his wife Dianne to do stuff around the house. But even with all of that, he still found a pretty canny way, a nifty way to use some of his medicines. We'll then talk to Martin Stewart. Martin's the National Advocacy Officer for the organisation Blind Citizens Australia. And he's had all sorts of challenges in his life. He's been blind for essentially all of his life. And the way he talks is really quite inspiring. I found it very inspiring to listen to Martin about the decisions he's made, about the life he wants to lead. And he's had a couple of other challenges in addition to being blind. And you'll hear more about that when we come to our chat with Martin. You won't hear much from me, which could be a good thing, but we will learn a lot about using medicines if you're blind or have trouble seeing. And we'll also learn a fair bit from others about living the life you want to live in spite of the challenges that might come your way. I hope you really enjoy the episode today. I enjoyed the discussions. We'll jump in now to our chat with David and Dianne. Hooroo. Thank you both. I'm with David and Dianne. Thank you very much for having me. I've called out to their place to have a chat about David's tablets. You obviously live in a retirement village?
Yes.
No. It's an over 50s.
Over 50, sorry. And how long have you lived here for?
3 years, thereabouts.
Yeah, okay. Now, David, you've got issues with your vision.
Yes.
So how would you describe your vision? What's the technical term?
Legally blind, but I can still see some things. I don't fall over the kids' toys on the floor. I can see enough to basically walk around, but I can't. I have no definition in depth, so I can see a curb, but I can't see the depth of the curb. Yeah, I can't drive.
Can't cook.
Can't cook.
Can't clean.
Yeah, can't clean. None of those good things.
That's convenient. How would you go watching a TV?
When I first started with losing my sight, I was told to buy the biggest TV and the brightest one I could find. But now, the best things to look at for me were bright things like kids programs, the Wiggles or something like that.
Did you ever get to watch Bluey? Was Bluey around in that time?
Yes, we watch Bluey.
I've listened to it.
Oh, you listen to it. We have a grandson.
But it,
I don't mind Bluey.
Oh, I like Bluey.
yeah.
You have to stand very close to the television there.
Now, to see anything of it or make out anything, I've got to be within a metre of the TV. Legally blind, but I can still make out blurs or...
And you were saying before you can find your way around your home here because you know where everything is. You sort of rely on being familiar with the place to get your way around?
Yes. I think it helps. The floors and ceilings and walls and everything are all white. That helps. Going into somebody else's home is hopeless.
And what adjustments have you had to make, Dianne?
Well, I'm the sole driver now, which can be a bit hair-raising at times. Because I'm not the most confident of drivers, but I'm the sole driver and I do all the cooking, do all the cleaning, do David's medication up, make sure he takes his medication, virtually everything, I suppose. Yeah.
So when it comes to the medication, what part do you play in the medication now, David? Are you able to sort it out at all, or are you able to do much with it?
No.
You just take it.
Just basically...
You just swallow it?
Yeah, as long as it's in the place where it should be, then I can take it.
In this next part of our chat with David and Dianne, we're going to be talking about how David uses insulin. Now, insulin's a type of medicine that you can use if you have diabetes. It's an injection and it comes in a syringe that you measure out the dose from. And David will talk about the smart way he's found, although he has trouble seeing the pen, the smart way he's found to work out what dose he needs to give himself. Although your vision's not the best, you've come up with sort of an ingenious way of using your insulin. Obviously, you've had to work your way around it. So do you mind describing to me how you do use the insulin? Because when you've got insulin, you've got to dial up doses. At first thought, you think if your vision's not the best, that's going to be pretty tricky. But how do you manage that?
Well, the insulin pen.
Clicks.
And in the setting of the insulin quantity, I've worked out that every click of the adjusting of the quantity is
1 unit.
One unit. So I've just got to count the amount of units as I go, as I turn the pen, and that gives me the correct quantity.
So for something that at face value could be pretty tricky, you've worked out a way to make it work. And you can obviously also screw on the needle on the end of the syringe too if you need to.
Yes, I do that. Sometimes it can be a bit iffy.
In what way?
Mainly in the putting the cap back on the needle.
I'm trying not to prick your finger.
And finger or whatever.
Okay.
I've worked out how to do that without doing that.
Okay.
But other than that, I found it's fairly straightforward. As long as something doesn't go wrong, like the needle getting bent or doesn't want to go into the skin at all. But no, it's manageable now.
Okay. But you certainly can't read the labels on the boxes.
No.
So you've got to rely on Dianne to measure out all your tablets for you.
Yes, exactly.
And how do you do that, Dianne?
Well, I do it once a week and I just get all the medication out. I have a list. I think it might have come from the chemist actually, the list. I just go through the list every week and put the tablets into the little boxes. We have 2 boxes, one for morning and one for night. The box for the morning has 2 little raised plastic things on them, which people use when they're blind. So that's the morning box. And then the night box doesn't have any little raised bits on it at all. So I just do the 2 boxes and once a week I do those. And that's how we work it out.
The next thing I'm going to ask David and Dianne about is using blister packs that your pharmacy can pack up for you. Another name for these that you might have heard before is something called a Webster pack. This is where the pharmacy can lay out your tablets for the week, what you might need to take in the mornings and the night times and any other time of the day. They can lay this out in the different days of the week so that all your tablets are laid out nicely in front of you. You don't have to think about what you need to take and when. It's all laid out and you just follow the pack from the start of the week all the way through to the end of the week. It can make taking your medicines a lot easier and take the hassle out of it for you. And obviously if you are blind or do have trouble seeing, it can make life a lot easier for you. You're not having to handle the boxes of tablets so much. It's all laid out by the pharmacy for you. And have you ever tried those blister packs that the pharmacy can do up, or sometimes you might know them as Webster packs, where the pharmacy will pack all the medicines into these plastic week-long packs?
We've tried it once, and
for a month we tried it.
And I had problems actually opening the blister pack and physically getting all the tablets out of it each time.
They'd stick in the corner, some of the little ones.
So we give that away and went back to Dianne doing it.
That seems to go okay now.
Yeah, goes okay. I've just got to double check sometimes that I've done it right.
You're all over it. And either you got any hot tips for someone who doesn't have the best vision in the world and how to get by with managing their medicines?
Yeah, it is what it is. If you can't read the label on the pack, well, then you need some help to do it, don't you? So it's important that you take the right amount of medication. So if you haven't got somebody that'll do it for you, you then need to rely on the chemist to do it.
The tip is don't be afraid to ask for help.
That's it, yeah. And they're very good, the chemist. They know me very well and they will help if I need help.
And maybe the other tip is to just come up with a system that works for you.
Yeah, that's it, I suppose. Yeah, everybody's different, so yes, you've got to work what's good for you.
Piece of cake.
Piece of cake.
Any final insights?
Stay healthy.
Stay healthy.
Eat your greens, David.
Yeah, David.
That's it.
Eat your greens. They're good for you, apparently. If I can get the word out, thank you very much for a chat.
Thank you, John.
Cheers. G'day, I'm back. That was David and Dianne. One thing that stood out for me at the end of that chat were their tips about asking others for help with your medicines if you're blind or have trouble with your vision. The next person we're going to talk to, Martin, has a slightly different take on that. Hopefully you'll find with Martin that he's very much more about doing all you can for yourself. And if you do have trouble with your vision or if you are blind, there are ways around it when you use medicines, and you can actually end up doing an awful lot on your own. Although you can obviously rely on other people, with what Martin's got to say, you may not have to rely on other people all that much at all. Martin has maybe a slightly different take on things to David and Dianne. Anyway, we'll jump over now to our chat with Martin. Hooray. I will let you do your own introduction. You'll be able to do that far better than I will.
Hello, everyone. I'm Blind Citizens Australia's National Advocacy Officer, dealing primarily with individual complaints, advocacy issues where we provide direct advocacy support or hints on how to self-advocate. We also have areas such as systemic advocacy and a policy team as well. So we do the lot when it comes to advocacy.
And before I get too much into the nitty-gritty of vision and the main focus of today's chat, keen to hear just 2 or 3 things about yourself, Martin, that maybe not many other people would know.
Well, my colleagues know this was a secret until now. I do love Vegemite on fruitcake. Yes, Christmas special, never to be forgotten. Always loved Vegemite on fruitcake. I enjoy, well, not many people would know this because I'm a bit of a reclusive person. I actually am very public and got a pretty high profile when it comes to the workplace and my life so far. But when it comes to social life, I am quite reclusive. Quite and reclusive would probably be a good way to
You're
put it.
a bit of a hermit, eh?
Sort of, yes. I love my own company. Not that I don't love others' company, but I do not feel loneliness when I'm on my own. I think I'm with a pretty good bloke. Yeah, and that's not meant to be, egotistical or anything. It's just I feel comfortable with myself and in my own skin, I guess.
I do find the fruitcake thing very disturbing.
Oh, good. I love. Oh, yes, this is great. I've disturbed you, shifted you already.
Yeah, highly disturbing.
It's something that when you try it, you'll always buy it. I'm telling you, you give it a go and you won't be disturbed any longer.
Well, every year Mum makes the Christmas cake. I don't know if she would appreciate me putting Vegemite on it.
It's
I'll
funny.
have to do it in private.
This is very interesting that you said do it in private. I know a colleague who took my suggestion to give it a try during the Christmas break, and she was with a whole lot of people, as you are, during Christmas lunch. And she said, I tried it, but I closed the cupboard against myself so I wouldn't be seen. So there you go.
Fair enough.
It reminds me of the time I used to wear a hard hat when being driven in a car. Oh, gee, the reaction, just because you wanted to keep yourself safe in case of an accident. My goodness.
No, I don't believe you. No, I've never seen anyone wearing a hard hat while driving a
Well,
car.
if you'd have come across me, you would have, because I did that.
Do you wear a
Yes.
hard hat on a plane?
Well, on a plane, if you're going down, you're going out.
The hard hat's not going to help you too much.
No, I don't think so.
Now, we're going to get stuck into the blind bit now.
That bit, my
That
goodness,
bit.
here we go. Righto, let's
Now-
go into the blind bit.
The natural thing for me to talk about with someone who is blind would say, you know, that might be a challenge in life, but do you view it as a challenge, or is it just who you are?
It's just a slight inconvenience. It's not something that's a big deal when you're born blind, as I was with a twin. I came out first, by the way, just in case you're wondering. When I was a child, I didn't think of it at all. As adulthood started coming, maybe even in the schoolyard, because of attitudes, I started noticing it, but not because I thought it was an issue. Until then, I'd ride bikes around and was just living. Then all of a sudden, I was being told I was a bit different, not by fact, but just by actions of people around me.
I think kids have a great way of highlighting everyone's differences.
Oh, yeah, you get dished out plenty, and I was dishing back plenty more.
Try to hold your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably tried to prove myself too much at times, to the point where you're a bit braver than you should be.
I used the word challenge before, and I think probably your greatest challenge, if I might say, Martin, is the fact I think you were born in New South Wales and now live in Victoria. So that would be a fairly major challenge to overcome.
Oh, you're going to get into this business. You're going to talk about our weather in Melbourne like I used to when I was in Sydney. It's great weather in Melbourne. As a matter of fact, we get less rain than Sydney, where they have twice as much, and yet we keep getting told we've got a horrible weather.
I think it's one of those things, what if you tell yourself often enough, you'll believe it? You can take Melbourne and I'll take Queensland. Now, my understanding, obviously, from what you've told me, is that you were born blind, is that right? But I understand, you can help me with this and all the listeners, there's some nuance to language about low vision, impaired vision and being blind, isn't there? Are you able to maybe talk us through some of those terms and what they all mean, please?
Even in the blind community, it's a vexed issue, sometimes debated issue, sometimes really argued. Blind Citizens Australia, we use the term blind or vision impaired. In America and a lot of the world, it's visually impaired, blind and visually impaired. And there are some other terms which are used. The blind word is usually used for those with very low, in other words, not useful vision or no vision. And vision impaired is for those with useful vision. That's sort of what Australia seems to have settled upon. However, I look forward to the next 10 years when it changes again. For myself, I say I'm totally blind. I like to leave it absolutely beyond doubt what I'm saying about myself. There are those who use other terms to describe themselves.
And you were born as totally blind?
Well, I might have been called vision impaired when I was born initially. I had very little vision, but enough to see colours. That's why red is my favourite colour. But I can't see it anymore. And that went out probably when I was about 4.
Okay.
I still remember colours. I remember seeing lightning, hence the reason why I love thunderstorms. I'm a thunderstorm chaser.
Coming back to what you mentioned earlier, you obviously in the schoolyard is when you first became aware of being blind, and maybe you were, if I can use the word, a bit different to everyone else. Has your outlook on being blind changed since then, or is it just who you are and you just get on with life and do what you got to do?
Well, firstly, why I mentioned the schoolyard is because I wasn't allowed in the schoolyard. So it was the authorities that made me face some realities. and that is that I was blind, therefore different, would be hurt so easily because I'm so fragile. And we, as in my twin brother and I, weren't allowed to play with the kids. So we had to start being rebellious. My attitude hasn't changed. I actually am now left with the loss of my right arm and leg due to a train accident in 2002. So I'm blind with those added challenges, if you like. I just look at life as an adventure, and whatever you face, you face. I don't see it as a huge thing. I just see it as something that I've got to live with.
Some people maybe at times view life as a bit like just having to adapt to what's thrown at you, or adapt to the circumstances that you're in. Do you have a similar philosophy, or do you view it in a different way?
Yes, I adapt, accept, move forward with, advocate over, all that stuff. It just gives you more opportunities to advocate over more things and to understand more people. That's my attitude, which I turn into actions.
Before our sort of recorded chat today, we had spoken previously, and I found out obviously that you'd lost your right arm and right leg in a train accident, and you sort of had a period of time where you were lying in bed and mobile after that. And you said that you did a lot of thinking then about how you might change your life and the way you live. Are you able to sort of share some of that?
Yes, well, the first one was my reaction to a question that I got just after coming out of the intensive care ward when I was asked, "How are you?" And I knew then that I had a choice to go up or go down. And I remember saying to myself, keep things as they are. Keep living the same way. And I squeezed the person's hand. I couldn't talk to reassure them I'd be fine. I then, through burns that I was suffering, believe me, I was suffering. I don't use that word lightly. Very intense pain over a month or two. But I decided that I was going to accept the couple of months of lying completely still as I was advised to, not scratch, not touch. And I accepted that based upon this is a great time to be occupied with how I'm going to shape the rest of my life. And despite many, many tumultuous occasions, both personally and painfully, I have kept it the same. I still advocate as I did before. I wanted to be employed as I am now. And I wanted to enjoy sports and stories, reading, enjoy the colour red, even though I can't see it, as I do now. So I kept my attitudes in exactly the same shape as they were before the what could have been life-changing event. In some ways, blindness prepared me for the loss of an arm and leg, because I remember making the choice not to know what had happened to me, because I knew something serious had happened to me. I woke up on the train tracks hearing the radios around me, the ambulance radios, and I made a decision not to ask what had happened. I just said, am I going to live? I knew it was serious.
Well, sorry, without me explaining it, do you just want to give it a little brief background about what happened?
I have 4 children, and one of them was giving some issues to my partner, so I had to leave work early on a train, and I walked up to the train and there was no announcement as to where it was going. So that obviously was on my mind and took my mind away from what should have been perhaps, and that's concentrating on stepping into the train, because I stepped into a gap between carriages instead of the doorway. I fell onto the tracks. A person ran up the side of the train and got to the cabin where the driver was, and the train took off. Milliseconds in it. She went downstairs where the staff were, and she said to them, a man's been killed upstairs. And the reason she said that is because I was in the middle of the train when I fell, and therefore half of it went right over the top of me, continued on to the next station. They came up as told to by the distraught passenger, and they saw me about 1/4 kilometre down, and one of them said, he's moving. And they went down, and the rest is history.
And so you were saying when the first responders sort of came to your aid, you made a conscious decision not to know what was happening?
Yes. And I made that decision very deliberately, because I wanted to only know when I was ready to know. And I only asked about 4 or 5 days later. what had happened. It was a very conscious decision to let the information come in slowly but surely rather than having it rushed at me. And I think that was the beginning of my new mindset to consciously be okay, to look after myself psychologically and to control it rather than it controlling me.
So you describe yourself, Martin, as being totally blind. How do you think your experiences in life would differ to someone that's acquired or picked up vision loss later in life?
Blind Citizens Australia has peer groups, one of which is the Acquired Sight Loss group, and I host that. And I hear the experiences of that right there. And what I'm hearing is different people have different ways. And I think that's right through human experience, that we're all different. Well, we've got different names, different voices, different everythings. Some people go into acceptance earlier, some people do not, and really mentally battle with it. I don't think it's fair for me to make a comment on that because, once again, I think everyone's different.
Do you think some people grieve the loss of their vision?
Yes, I grieved the loss of my arm and leg. I remember that very, very clearly. It's a natural process, losing something that's so valuable, so cherished, so useful as sight is. So, yes, it's a major impact that occurs. But some people ride through that out the other side and accept more quickly than others. The experience of being vision impaired compared to, and I don't like the word compared to, but for the purposes of having explanations here, compared to blind is quite profound, because when you're vision impaired, you take other things into account to navigate colour, contrast, TGSIs, which are ground surface indicators, the tactile tiles.
Oh, they're the plastic bumps you might see on the ground as you're wandering around.
Yes, blind people also take notice of those, but it's a big deal, people that have been impaired, because they're looking at the colour contrasts and track them possibly more accurately than a blind person does, because we are so concentrated on operating with, I should say, being a dog guide handler, etc., or operating a cane.
Getting back to before when I was talking about the different experiences people might have, whether they were born totally blind or if they've developed vision loss later in life, I shared an interview with David and Dianne that the listeners will have just have heard. When I listened back to that, I got a sense from David, who has picked up vision loss later in life. He hasn't acquired vision loss, who relies really heavily on Dianne to do pretty much everything for him around the house. That David, I could imagine, could feel really disempowered, or over the fact he probably doesn't have a whole lot of independence. What advice would you have for someone who is feeling this way? They've developed vision loss later in life. They've lost a lot of their independence. How would you suggest that they move forward? How do you suggest they might adapt to what's happened?
Firstly, I'd say your existing circumstance can sometimes be a factor in the way you move forward. If you have a partner, you may depend upon that person rather than use or develop your own capacity as quickly as you would if you were, for example, on your own. So sometimes the course can be preset by your existing living circumstance. So the first thing I would say, if you want to be independent, if that's your mindset, start with gentleness, because your partner's obviously going to want to help you. Say, I need to help myself as well, and carry that out slowly but surely, and be gently definite about it, but be definite about it, because you must be who you want to be. And if you want to be independent, you must express that and show through your actions. If you need to retrain yourself or be assisted by a professional, for example, to do some cooking, put the washing up, do some useful things that make you feel, because you are a contributor, rather than submitting to naturally what people will naturally always want to do, and that's help you. So just be careful that you don't become so submissive that you lose your capacities that you probably have. So that's the first thing I would say. Just, if you want to be independent, if that's what you were, before. There's no way should you let that go. You can still be independent. As a totally blind person, you can be independent, not just a vision impaired person. You can be independent if you've got that mindset.
And of course, they can sign up to Blind Citizens Australia and join one of the groups.
Oh, yes. We have guitar groups, cooking groups, as in groups that enjoy talking about all those things, books, guitars, the acquired sight loss group. Yeah, we have a lot of opportunities to be employed because we have a Eyes to the Future group that talks about employment, talks to future employers, and it talks about employment for those who are wanting to prepare themselves to contribute.
Now, if we turn our minds to medicines, from a vision point of view, if we look through the process of using and getting medicines, the process of accessing them and using them and getting information, probably been designed for someone with vision. All these things were invented by people with vision over time, working out what's the best way to their mind of doing this and that. Probably, I would imagine, the standard process isn't going to be very user-friendly for someone who hasn't got the best vision in the world. What would your comments be regarding all of this, about using medicines, accessing information?
I think the digital age is starting to open up opportunities to make blindness or vision impairment less inconvenient. However, we're a clever lot. We are quite creative, invent things, whether it be scratching a bottle in a different way. If we have 3 or 4 bottles, every bottle has a different shaped scratch on it, so we know which tablet's in what bottle. As I do, I pull the tablets out of the boxes, and I've got about 5 different tablets I take, but each one of them is slightly different in its shape, in its size, and I can feel that from within the what I call ream, it's probably got a different name to it, of tablets. So I put them in a sandwich bag and I know which one's which and I take them accordingly. I mean, I suppose what else would you expect if over 90% of the population is with vision? Life's going to be made for vision, but increasingly we are talking about an inclusive society as it should be. Therefore, the gaps are very slowly, too slowly, being filled by braille on some boxes, etc. More to come.
So I'm keen now to hear from you some maybe tips and tricks you might have for managing the whole medicine process. I'm going to go through what, up to my mind, is the process of using medicines and getting information and yada, yada, yada.
Sure.
And I'm keen for you to sort of throw out some tips and tricks.
Yeah, I hope I can. Go for it.
Okay, prescriptions. So obviously you can get, back in the day, everything was be on paper. You'd have paper scripts and they'd all be the same shape or size, obviously, no matter what the medicine was. But nowadays we're getting electronic scripts. You might just have a token that goes to your phone or an email sent to the pharmacy.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for managing either paper or electronic scripts?
Well, I love electronic scripts purely because they provide some accessibility and you get it sent. You can forward it to your chemist and away you go. It's all set up for you. However, if you get a written script, you can take it to your chemist and get them sorted by your chemist, kept by your chemist, and they dispense accordingly, as long as you tell your chemist to remind you when you're on your last repeat. But that's another way of contributing by not having another person in your home having to look after your medicines. You're still doing it yourself through an official chemist process.
And my understanding is that there's functionality on phones now that it can obviously read the words on the phone. It will read out the name of the medicine for you.
Yes. Now, there are other methods that we use. For example, if I was to hold scripts at home, I could put different scripts on different shelves and just recall that. You can get stickers which have a voice output by pointing a device at them. There's a thing called Pen Friend, which can also do the same thing. It's a pen where you put the sticker, you label it, you place it upon something like a script or a shelf where you put the script. So you can go back and put the same script on that same shelf and you point at it and it will read it to you. There's, as I said before, different ways of scratching or bending a particular corner. There's various quite creative ways in which we inform ourselves.
The next question I'm going to ask Martin is about how he finds information about medicines. Now, obviously, you can ask your doctor, your nurse, or your pharmacist about medicines, and they can give you some help. But if you did want to do your own searching, obviously the internet's a big place people go to get information about their medicines. You've probably done this already. Martin's going to mention Googling for information on the internet and also using a website called ChatGPT. Some of you might have heard about ChatGPT. It's a fairly new thing. It's a fairly new website that you can sign up to, and you can type in a question and it'll churn out an answer. You can even ask it to write something for you. You can ask it to write you a speech or some information to put on your website, all sorts of stuff. It's actually pretty impressive in my opinion. But Martin will talk about going to ChatGPT and putting in a question and it'll spit out an answer. After talking to Martin, I tried this, and I must admit, when I typed in a basic question about, say what's the best time of day to take this or that, or can you use something for this, it actually gave me some pretty good answers. Now, I'm not an expert on this. I doubt it's always going to give you the 100% right answer all the time. And as Martin will say, he asks the question in a few different ways to make sure he's getting the right answer. My suggestion would be any type of answer you get out of something like ChatGPT or just normal Googling on the internet, take the answer to your doctor, your pharmacist or your nurse, and just run it by them and get their opinion as well. Also, if you're just using boring old straight Google, an internet search to look for information, if you come across websites that sound too good to be true, they probably are, or if they're trying to sell you something, that could be a bit of a warning sign that some of the information they're saying may not be 100% accurate. It might be a bit biased. They're obviously trying to sell you something. Also, if the website's only giving you one solution to a problem and not giving you a whole range of solutions, then you may not want to trust that information completely. Also, have a look and see how recent the information on the website is. Obviously, the more recent it is, the more reliable it's likely to be. So that's just a few tips when you go looking for stuff on the internet. Remember, not everything obviously on the internet is true, so use your head and have a bit of a think about the information you come across before believing it completely. Okay, we'll now jump back into our chat with Martin about looking for information about medicines. My next question relates to as well to reading, but if you're wanting to get information about a medicine, for example, you've been started on a new tablet, for example, and you're wanting to find out all about it and all the pros and cons about it, how would you go about getting information about this new medicine or any medicine that you're using?
Well, these days it's becoming increasingly exciting with my acquisition of ChatGPT, where I can ask about it and I get it. And what I do is I cross-check the answer. So I just don't naturally believe it. I will ask the same question in different ways in case it's not giving you an accurate initial answer. So that's, at the moment, I think, one of the ways. The other ways is you can ask for the correct spelling of your medication and go Google it, as they say. Now, I know a lot of people, probably including yourself, would say that's not the best way to do it. You never know what information you're going to get. But you know what? I think overall, if you're a good Googler or chat GPTer, you can get close to the mark when it comes to the information. And because you already know a little bit about the medication, for example, what symptoms meant to resolve, if you hear something way out, you just use your intuition a bit and you say, no, I'm going to check this. And you cross-check what you've been told. So I just think that you've got to sort of drill down rather than just sort of automatically believe. And if you do that, you probably end up with an average answer that you'd be comfortable with.
The whole aspect of finding stuff on the internet about medicines is, if we let it be, would be another whole episode in itself. Yeah, you've hinted at you want the trustworthy information, and you might even, over time and experience of Googling stuff, have a set of maybe websites that you might feel comfortable going to.
Yeah, a lot of blind people are very tech savvy. Not all, but a lot are. And because we're reliant upon getting information in this way, I think we obtain skill sets that a lot of people don't have.
When you get a medicine from your pharmacist that's got the label on, the instructions on it, or you bought a box of something from the pharmacy or the supermarket with the directions on the box, how do you read that? How do you work out what the instructions are and what you're meant to do with the medicine?
Well, sometimes simply by asking someone, let's be straight, we can't always expect to find out in a timely fashion, that is, what we need to find out before taking a medication. So we'll ask someone. But there are other times we will go to the net, look it up, or before purchase, before going out, we will look it up so we can make an informed decision. Of course, I'm talking from the perspective of someone who's been blind all my life. Someone who's newly blind, naturally you'd be more dependent for some time, but that skill set will build as long as you want it to, as quickly in the end as what you want it to if you are of an independent mindset. And I stress that you've got to want to be independent. And if you do want that life and to continue to contribute, you will turn out that way because you want to. Can I just advise, though, that you need to do it in a way where your behaviours are not too temperamental. Some people who want to be independent can become too firm about it, I guess. It's great to be firm about it, but just remember the people who are wanting to help you have a kind heart as well, and they're wanting to see you not go through what they think you are going through. So just carefully explain your truth.
Now, you've already touched on this next part to some extent, but my question was going to be, how do you tell different medicine containers apart? But you've already mentioned, obviously, you can do it via feel or maybe scratching up the surface of one container so you can tell it apart from something else.
Yeah, people have different methods. Of course, there's the old blister pack for tablets, but we come up with different ways for different people, and they can be very creative or simple as putting different medications on a different shelf. It's all a matter of personality type, what suits you. You're about to get into a subject, I assume. Here's me thinking ahead here.
Here we go.
Drops, the old liquid medication.
Well, I'm going to start off with reference to the interview we did with David that I sort of spoke about earlier. David, that fellow who's picked up vision loss later in life and uses insulin, the insulin pen where you've got to sort of twist it to measure out a dose. And yes. I would have thought before chatting to David that would have been a struggle. But obviously when you turn this pen to measure out your dose, this syringe to measure out your dose, every dose is a little click. So you just counts the clicks and away he goes, piece of cake.
Yes.
But yes, I was going to get particularly, how do you measure doses, especially if things aren't a tablet or a capsule, like eye drops or a liquid you want to swallow?
All right, let's talk about the different types of drops. So
here we go. Strap yourself in, people.
Yes, here we go. Eye drops. Now, I happen to have two artificial eyes, so I can't feel the dropping on the eye, the surface of my eye, made of glass. So I wait for it to hit the edge of my eye. So just wait. And then I think, okay, it's one. So I wait until it touches the skin, I guess, of my eye rather than the eye itself. Now, I'm not sure about this. You might be able to tell me. Does the normal eye surface have a feeling? I don't know. If it does, you would feel it drop onto that part of your eye or the eye, and you would know that's one drop. Carefully.
Yes, it does have a feeling. And sometimes a tip for someone who's not quite sure, obviously who has feeling and isn't quite sure, is to, if you can, leave the drop in the fridge. And that way, when you pop it in your eye, you'll be able to feel the coolness of the eye hit your eyeball rather than putting drops in that are room temperature.
That's the other trick, is to hopefully get something that can be put in the fridge, and that contrast between your body temperature and the temperature of the drop can allow you to feel the contrast very clearly.
Now, one thing I should say is check with your pharmacist before putting any eye drops in the fridge, just to make sure you can. It's okay with most eye drops, but you're always best to check.
Oral medication.
Yeah, if we're measuring out a liquid that you're going to have to swallow, how do you do that?
You can get droppers which put a certain amount out, but quite frankly, some of this can be, to use the word again, quite challenging, and may, if you are wanting to be super accurate, require a sighted person's assistance. The other thing I wanted to say, when it comes to timers and timing, that's opened up a lot more these days with the use of your phone I put a lot of information into a calendar, for example, that reminds me at a certain time. There's also a device called a tab timer that allows you to put several alarms per day, and it sort of carries your medication in a little carriage, and it comes to that area where you can just tip it out, and there are all your medications. Yeah.
So I've seen there's a few different types of these devices where you sort of pack your medicines into the little compartments, and the lid's released at a certain time of the day, so you can open it up. But obviously, you can also get the alarm going off as a reminder to take a dose at the particular time.
One thing that I wanted to mention here is the difficult time we had, as in the blind community had, when COVID came. And that was an extremely difficult period in more ways than one, when we were told to distance, when we need to touch people, for example, to be guided at times. We need to touch seats to sit down. All kinds of things are done by touch. And yet society was being told, keep your distance. And then the big challenge came when we were able to rat test, but none of those tests were accessible.
Well, I guess you've got to look for the change in colour once you whack the thing up your nose and then put the solution on the strip, and you've got to wait X so many minutes to see a change in colour or not. The final question is, and this may not be too tricky, this of all the ways of using medicines, this could well be the easiest part of it, is any advice around storing medicines? Like if you've got to keep them away from kids or in the fridge, any hot tips on that?
The main thing we do is what we're told to do, because medicines require certain temperatures and have dates where you shouldn't take them anymore, etc. We pretty well stick to the script there, but sometimes if you're taking a couple of medications, we'll put them on different shelves, scratch an area of a box, of a bottle, and go by touch as well, because it's amazing how many bottles have different shapes or even the slightest little difference in the top of it or the bottom of it. You'll feel the writing or a line that's on the bottom of, if there's a difference, we'll find it because we have to, and we'll use that as our reference point. That is particularly necessary if you're taking several medications.
Thanks for giving us the rundown on using medicines if you're having issues with your vision. So I just want to jump to your role with Blind Citizens Australia. Can you tell us a little bit about your role as the National Advocacy Officer, please?
Yes. My role is to deal primarily with individuals' issues, their challenges, what's confronted them, and we'll get the call. They'll be transferred through to me, and I will have that chat. While I'm having the chat, I'm thinking about the advice I may give them. For example, you often get, do you think I can self-advocate? And I more often than not will say, absolutely. But there may be some issues I hear where I say, well, before you think about that, before you decide, I want you to know that I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to guide you through to the answer that you want to move forward with. So if you want to self-advocate, I'm here to help you, to give you the tools. And if you want to receive our direct advocacy support, we're here to do that as well. So there's different things that you consider. For example, someone's psychological health when it comes to the issue itself. And what I mean by that is that some are pushing down on that person so heavily that they're suffering from natural feelings of exhaustion and just wanting to be helped, but they still want to continue on. So I tend in that case to say, we are here to help you. I can hear your anxiety. I just want you to know that you do have a choice to let go of some of it and let us help you a little more directly than perhaps you have thought about. And there are some times where people just simply ring us up and ask us straight out for our direct advocate support. So it's, as they say, horses for courses, for want of a better description. It's what people want to do. Self-advocacy is a big thing. We believe in people's opportunities to self-advocate, and we'll help with the tools to do that. Also the opposite, just completely leaving it in our hands to help you push your case. We'll do that too.
And are you able to share some of the examples of when people come wanting your help with advocacy?
Yes, pretty well anything imaginable, from access to dating areas, nightclubs, dog guide refusal events. That commonly is known as a guide dog, but in our community it's dog guide. So many people are denied access because of the existence of the dog that are accompanying them, whether it be in a restaurant, in a taxi, hotels. It's pretty sad, really, the state of affairs in that area. We have employment issues, inaccessible websites. We are occasionally dealing issues of people simply wanting to work their way with a partner when they've acquired sight loss. That doesn't require advocacy so much, but it does sometimes mean that we are spoken with in order to build their self-confidence, to live successfully with their partner, because these events can sometimes, very often, change relationships, whether it be friendships or their marriages and other forms of relationships. So it certainly can be a significant, impactful event.
Sounds like you've got to be a real jack of all trades.
Well, Blind Citizens Australia provides many opportunities to live successfully as a blind and vision impaired person. And we have our project teams who work to educate the community, as I mentioned before, prospective employers. And we also have opportunities for peer groups. And we are dealing with the big and small issues that affect people. And sometimes, there are things that you wouldn't imagine would affect someone, but they call us and they say it is. And we're in there saying, well, because it affects you, I'm going to advocate for you because you've asked for it. And you find out as you drill down why it's affected that person so much. So you should never, ever treat someone as if their complaint is trivial, because it never is if it's actually impacting that person.
Now, I must say about Blind Citizens Australia that I don't think I've encountered any, or certainly not many, we'll call them support or advocacy organisations that are as active. There's, just by looking at your website, there's a mountain of stuff available for your members to get involved with. You obviously do a pile of work. To my mind, a really impressive organisation.
Well, thank you. If you wish to contact us, our main toll-free number, 1800 033 660, and our email address is bca@bca.org.au. So please move forward and contact us if you feel you need us. And our membership fees are $0, so you won't be imposed upon for any of your well-earned, valued finances. And we will offer all kinds of assistance in all kinds of areas of your life if you want us to.
Beautiful. Now, is there anything else that you'd like to add that we haven't covered off on?
I just want to wish everyone a great all of this year. People say Happy New Year, and often they mean the first day or two of it. I think it's important to put your everything forward in as positive a way as you can to get the best out of life, and be friendly to each other, support each other, no matter what your colour, your country of origin is. Be inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. I really, really enjoyed the chat. We covered a whole lot of stuff, all the way from fruitcake with Vegemite on to the ins and outs of using medicines if you're having issues with your vision. So that was really excellent. Thank you.
Nutty is a fruitcake with Vegemite on it.
You can find information about any of the websites we spoke about in today's episodes in the show notes. Thanks to my brother Robert Woodward for expertly writing and playing the music on today's podcast. Please subscribe and follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can also follow Medicines Ed on Facebook and LinkedIn. If you're interested in working with us, then please get in touch by email at info@medicinesed.com.au. Please feel free to also send us an email if you have any questions or would like to make a comment about the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Hooroo!